Welcome, everyone, to this briefing brought to you by the Israel Defense and Security Forum, IDSF. It's been quite some time since we've had our last briefing. We had a little bit of a hiatus for the Sukkot holiday. A lot of people were messaging me, hey, Moshe, I guess the war is over. That's why there's no briefings. War is not over, and our briefings continue. It's a great pleasure to be joined today by Brigadier General Amir Avivi. General, thank you so much for joining.
My pleasure.
General, let's just dive in. If you could give clarity, what is the current status of the ceasefire in Gaza? What's happening with the Israeli soldiers right now in Gaza?
Okay, so I want to remind the deal that was struck, this 20 points, and the deal started with Hamas having to give us all the hostages, those who are alive and those who are not alive, in the first 72 hours. And then the next step of the deal is Hamas disarms, lay down the weapon. And the last part of the deal is that there is a new government and there is a demilitarization of the Gaza Strip. But what happened actually is that in the first 72 hours, Hamas did give all the hostages that are alive. And this was, of course, a big deal and a relief. And everybody in Israel is really very happy about that. But when it came to those who are not alive, they started playing games. They returned only a few. Even one of the bodies was not a hostage. And they are still holding quite a few hostages who are not alive, claiming that they're not finding them. They don't know. We know that they know what they are. So we are long past the 72 hours, and we're still dealing with the issue of the hostages who are not alive. After 72 hours, President Trump gave a statement which is really important. He said, we are moving to stage 2. And this is an important statement because basically he's saying, look, we're not extending stage 1 because they didn't give all the hostages. They are supposed to give all the hostages. But now we're at stage 2, meaning they need to disarm, they need to lay down their weapons. And instead of doing that, Hamas yesterday conducted an attack in Rafah. We have to understand that Rafah is attached to the humanitarian zone. There are still tunnels. The distance between Hamas and the Israeli soldiers, it's a few hundred meters. The soldiers are operating along this yellow line, and they attacked with 3 different terrorist groups shooting anti-tank missiles. I remind that anti-tank missile can fly 3 miles. Okay, so a few hundred meters, it's not a big deal. And snipers the same. They can shoot from afar. So they can conduct this attack from areas that are not under Israeli control. And also, occasionally, there are tunnels that were not found even in Israeli control that they might emerge from. So they attacked a force that was conducting combat engineer activities with bulldozers, and they were with the brigade of the Nahal, and unfortunately, 2 Nahal soldiers, an officer, were killed, and one of the combat engineer driver was hit badly. Israel retaliated and did an attack, attacking like 80 targets, killing dozens of Hamas terrorists. But it doesn't change anything regarding the need to disarm Hamas. Hamas is not disarming. So what we are seeing now is basically, in my opinion, Turkey, Qatar, Hamas challenging the application of the deal, believing that maybe the fact that, Trump announced this is the end of the war and that's it, and the fact that people want to move to the next stage, maybe this will create a reality where Hamas will not be disarmed and Gaza won't be demilitarized the way the deal is supposed to happen. And this is something we cannot agree. And I think that also President Trump means business when he says they need to disarm. Both President Trump and Prime Minister Netanyahu stated again and again that it can be done the nice way or the hard way. And President Trump said they don't lay down their weapons. Um, the military option is on the table. Um, Frankly, I will be very surprised to see that the diplomatic effort will bring Hamas to lay down their weapons. I don't think this is going to happen. And therefore, I think that the bigger chances are that we are going back to fight. How exactly it will look like, there are different options. We're still in a situation where Israel is controlling 53% of the Gaza Strip, surrounding Hamas from all sides, controlling Rafah Crossing and Philadelphia. So this is basically a good starting point to do anything that Israel wants to do and will have to do. Eventually, the only force that can really dismantle Hamas is the IDF, and it's going to happen. Now, why there is a need for such close coordination between President Trump and Netanyahu? For a simple reason, because the deal is not just about Gaza the day after, it's about signing these global regional peace agreements. It's a deal that Gaza is only a small part of. And because things are being pushed simultaneously, both what will happen in Gaza and pushing forward the normalization, this is done in a very, very close coordination. I can say that the talks between the two leaders and the level of coordination, we've seen that again and again, is really, really close. And everybody understands that Hamas eventually needs to be dismantled and get out of Gaza. We can also not allow a reality where Hamas is killing all the clans and forces that were fighting alongside Israel, because we need to have somebody to deal with, which is not Hamas, not Palestinian Islamic Jihad, and not the Palestinian Authority. And therefore, I think that soon enough we'll see the IDF operating. There are many options how to do it in order to bring Hamas on its knees and end the war in a way that adheres to all goals of war. And this is the discussion that are being done now in the cabinet, with the army, with the Shin Bet, in order to really build the right programs. But also, as this is done, Israel wants, in coordination with the US, to really get the support and legitimacy globally to understand Hamas is not doing his side, and we are more than able and should go in and do the job and destroy Hamas and dismantle all this terror infrastructure. As all of this is happening, we see an alarming increase in drones that are being sent from Egypt through the Egyptian border to Israel. In the last months, 500 big drones crossed the border between Egypt and Israel, into Israel. These drones, some of them brought cigarettes and drugs. Other drones brought weapons, which are sent to the Bedouins in the Negev. And in some occasions, they send it from the Negev into Gaza. It's a whole smuggling operation. It's interesting that in 2007, 6, when we disengaged, retreated from Gaza, they started moving terrorists from Gaza to Egypt, and from Egypt they went into Israel. Now it's a different kind of operation, from Egypt to Israel and from Israel to Gaza. or from Israel to Judea and Samaria. Um, so these terrorists are always very creative and find new ways to challenge us, and we're challenged on the Egyptian border and also on the Jordanian border. We hear more about the Egyptian border not because it's more busy than the Jordanian border. We hear about it more because there is more capabilities that are being used, and then we spot these drones. In Jordan, we don't even have the capabilities, so they simply go in and we don't necessarily know. So I can say that when we'll finish dismantling Hamas and in the coming months, hopefully, the whole center of gravity of Israel needs to move to what's happening inside Israel, in the Negev, in Judah and Samaria, in the Galil, and deal with this big campaign over the land of Israel. So this is what's going on at the moment. Can say that Israelis, on one hand, we're really excited and happy to see the hostages that are alive coming back, but there is also a lot of anger that Hamas has not been destroyed yet, that we didn't receive our other hostages who are not alive. There is a concern that, we're going back to containing and, just keeping the ceasefire. And I hear a lot about we have to enforce the ceasefire. It's not about a ceasefire. There is nothing in the agreement about a ceasefire. The agreement says returning all the hostages, laying down their weapons, getting out of Gaza, and demilitarizing the Gaza Strip. The part of the ceasefire is obviously goes with laying down the weapons and demilitarizing. But that's not the goal. The goal is to get rid of Hamas and demilitarize Gaza, and this is what we need to do. Moshe?
General, thank you for sharing all of that. If you could just explain a little bit about the division right now of Gaza, where in the IDF is kind of controlling the eastern side and Hamas is still on the coast. Is that viable long term? Meaning, we've already seen, as you just noted, that with snipers or RPGs, they can shoot into the Israeli controlled area. So long term, is this division something that can really work, or it's really just a stopgap until Israel takes over all of Gaza?
So I think it was, a big achievement that we managed to stay in all the strategic places, on Philadelphia, all of Rafah, parts of Khan Yunis, the northern part, the perimeter and beyond, controlling half of Gaza, after they gave us all the hostages that are alive. So the point we're starting from is we're controlling half of Gaza, and we're completely surrounding Hamas. So Hamas cannot smuggle anything really, not from Philadelphia, not from Egypt, not directly anyway. We're defending well, the Israeli towns. And I think that moving from the 53% to the 75, 80% that we were just before our hostages were returned, this we can do in no time, especially taking in account that there are no hostages alive anymore. This really makes it much simpler for us to work. So I would assume that that might be the plan. I mean, if Hamas they don't lay down the weapons, we start closing on them and taking areas again, pushing them back and back, and really to a reality like it was before, where all the Gazans were maybe in 15% of the Gaza Strip, um, until they say it's game over. And now it will be much easier for the IDF to maneuver. So the question is not if, but when. When are we starting to attack and maneuver again? Of course, I would love to be wrong, and in the next time we have a briefing, say that no, diplomacy worked and Hamas really cooperated, they laid down the weapons and so on. But realistically speaking, I'm not sure this is something that is very realistic, and it's more realistic that it's going to happen. But when they see that we are serious, that we're not giving up, and we mean business, and we're not going to stop until they will be completely dismantled.
Now, much earlier on in the war, I think you speculated that Sinwar and Hamas didn't really expect Israel to declare all-out war on Hamas and invade Gaza as they did. Otherwise, why would they have done it? If I can recap that position you expressed a long time ago, and I'm wondering right now, Hamas gave up their greatest leverage, the hostages, which is phenomenal that that happened. But what is going through their heads right now? Because once they give up their greatest leverage, they kind of know the end is near for them. Are they assuming Israeli society is going to break down or international pressure is going to prevent us from continuing? Meaning, how do we do the opposite of what they planned?
So they were in a big distress and an understanding that it's almost game over. They need to give up their biggest leverage, as you said, the hostages that are alive. Um, but it's my feeling that Qatar, Turkey, they said to them, look, there's no choice. You have to give them up, but we'll do a real effort to try and stop the process and make you stay, and really building on the idea that there was an announcement, the war is over, and who wants to go fighting again? Even President Trump announced that the war is over. So they're trying to really create a reality that, okay, we lost half of Gaza, we lost the hostages, but we're still controlling half of Gaza. And from there, we'll see, how we rebuild ourselves and launch terror attacks again, as they did this week. And to my understanding, this is not something Israel or the US will accept. So again, it's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when. The problem with the when is that every single day that we don't launch the attack, they are regrouping, they are getting stronger, are getting organized, and this at the end of the day will make it more challenging for the IDF. And so we cannot wait too much. So, and I understand the complexity of the diplomacy and coordinating and showing that we really did everything to push it diplomatically and so on. But at the end of the day, it's about our security. And my biggest concern is that they will try to kidnap a soldier, attack one of the positions along this yellow line, and the line is long, and it's always creates a vulnerability when are deployed in defense. And when the other side attacks, they can fail many times, but there will be a moment where they'll score, and we don't want this to happen. We need to get back to be proactive and get them on the run and not be on the defense.
And now that there are no more living hostages in Gaza, can Israel follow kind of a Lebanon type model where it's really airstrikes as opposed to troops on the ground? Is that possible for the rest of Gaza?
So we can do airstrikes. It will have some impact, but it's not going to dismantle them. And they can go into the tunnels and they can hide behind the civilians, and you'll have collateral damage. And it's not going to solve it. You cannot dismantle them and make them lay down their weapons if you don't go in. We could, theoretically do a siege and not bring in anything. We are controlling the borders. We can stop humanitarian aid, but let's be realistic. We tried this idea of not bringing in humanitarian aid, and immediately there was a global campaign accusing us of starvation. Even in the event yesterday, they stopped the humanitarian aid for 1 hour and renew it after 1 hour. It's not really a tool that can be effective in the kind of world we live today, with really everybody trying to find something to accuse Israel. So saying we won't give aid or saying there won't be reconstruction either cannot work or it won't impact in the short term. And we need to be effective in the short term. And the way to do it is start mobilizing the IDF. And mobilizing the IDF is also a matter of preparations. And the army, needs to refresh the units, to organize, readiness. So, what is the timetable? It's composed of different considerations. It's composed from army considerations. It's composed from the process of coordination with the US and how long they're willing to give a chance to diplomacy and so on. But at the end of the day, going back to fight is imminent.
General, we have so many questions coming in. Thank you, of course, to all of our viewers sending in the questions in the Zoom chat or to my WhatsApp and email. They know how to get the questions in. And you mentioned, General, about what's happening right now on the Egypt border, which I think is news for a lot of people, hundreds of drones coming over. Can you elaborate a little bit on that? To what extent is Sisi and the Egyptian government involved in that, or looking the other way, or just not able to control what is happening there?
So I want to explain what happened in the border. What we saw in this border is until 2 years ago, even a bit more, they used to come. Bedouins came to the Israeli border with a lot of firepower. They would do a smuggling operation, shooting, and so on. And at a certain point, there was an Egyptian soldier that crossed to the Israeli side and killed two soldiers. And at that point, the IDF changed the rules of engagement and started being much more aggressive towards armed people on the Egyptian side. And when we changed that, and then came also the 7th of October, the whole way the IDF was operating along the border changed end to end, and suddenly the IDF was shooting anybody who would come near our border, and this made it impossible for the smugglers to smuggle into Israel. Following that, the smugglers change end to end the way they are operating. And we have to remember they smuggle a lot of drugs, so they have a lot of money. They purchased big drones, really big drones, and they started sending drones into Israel. It started with a few, and it reached a peak of almost 500 in 1 month, which is crazy. It's really big drones. So Israel is deploying different capabilities, technological capabilities to deal with this. I won't get into the technologies, but there are many sophisticated technologies to deal with these drones. But sincerely speaking, it's not 100%, not even 50. And unfortunately, they managed to smuggle quite a few weapons, hundreds of weapons into Israel. And this is just talking about the Egyptian border because we know more because we see the smuggling. In the Jordanian border, it's even worse because we don't have all these technologies and we really need to safeguard this border. Um, this smuggling on both borders is always done while paying ransom to Egyptian or Jordanian officers and soldiers. So they are completely cooperating and people are getting paid. And we cannot trust them, not the Jordanians and not the Egyptians. Um, it's a whole enterprise with a lot of money. Um, and the unbelievable thing about the weapons that are coming in, it's not considered, according to Israeli law, terrorism. It's considered something criminal. It's not terrorism. So one of the decisions that was taken this week, which is very interesting, with the new head of Shin Bet, he said from this moment onwards, Shin Bet considers the big crime families terror organizations. And the moment Shin Bet starts dealing with this, it's a completely different ballgame. It's not police, it's Shin Bet. It's a completely different capabilities, completely different laws. In terrorism, it's a completely different ballgame, and I think that definitely a lot of the things that are going on need to be defined under terrorism, and not just regular smugglers. And then we'll have much more tools to deal with these phenomena.
Brigadier General Amir Avivi, thank you so much for sharing all of this with us. Thank you for joining us again after that break. It's great to have you here sharing all of this and leading us, of course, in Israel to victory. Thank you to all our viewers and supporters for tuning into this briefing. We will be back with you tomorrow, 10 a.m. Eastern Time, 5 p.m. here in Israel. Until then, stay safe, stay strong. Take care, everyone.